Number 10. Red Goblin. Red Goblin is the amalgamation of the Carnage symbiote, combined with Norman Osborn's Green Goblin. When you mix a blood-fused symbiote like Carnage together with the insane Green Goblin, you get Red Goblin, a pretty fearsome foe to be reckoned with. Spider-Man had to renounce his mantle to protect his family and fight Red Goblin as Peter Parker, and had to also call in backup to defeat this epic version of Norman Osborn introduced a few years back. This whole experience as well severely messed with Norman's mind, and later resulted in him believing that he was in fact Carnage, aka Cletus Cassidy, and was not at all Norman Osborn, forgetting all about that life until another mysterious villain, Kindred, gave him back his sanity. Thanks, Kindred, that's so nice of you. Number 9. Kindred. Kindred is the Spider-Man villain who was first introduced in the 2018 series of Amazing Spider-Man in issue 1. Kindred itself is a demon from hell who used to be human and seems to have had a close relationship with Peter Parker in life. However, what we didn't know for a long time was just who Kindred's true identity was. We simply knew the villain wanted revenge on Pete and on Norman Osborn, and that they had demonic powers in addition to having 2 pet centipedes, which Kindred often uses to assist them and do their bidding. Recently, Kindred's true identity was revealed to be that of Harry Osborn, but some fans are still hesitant to take this reveal at face value, believing it could be a misdirect and that we may still not yet know Kindred's true identity. So many people have so many theories. And before we move on to our number 8 spot, just a reminder, if you love us like we love you, show it to us by giving this video a thumbs up, and thank you for doing so. Number 8. The Griever at the end of all things. So I always want to call this villain the Griever at the end of the universe, but that must be because I'm a huge Hitchhiker's Guide fan, and that's just bubbling back to the surface in my mind. But it's not the Griever at the end of the universe, it's the Griever at the end of all things. The Griever at the end of all things was a new villain who showed up and seemingly killed Molecule Man, proving how powerful and scary she was as early as her first appearance. I gotta say, I think her design is cool, but I'm kinda disappointed that she hasn't resurfaced in any Fantastic Four issues since her first fight with the FF team. The fight was so epic that the Fantastic Four actually had to call in a ton of backup, calling on temporary and rotating members of the team to join them, and finally revealing after the events on Battleworld and the recreation of the multiverse that they actually weren't dead as all their fellow heroes were made to believe, but were actually alive and rebuilding everything in secret. So that let that cat out of the bag. Number 7. Apocalypse's children. Slash first horsemen, I suppose. These kids are the ones who obviously inspired Apocalypse in the future when it came to naming and creating his horsemen thereafter. Their names are the same as those Apocalypse would normally take for his horsemen: war, death, famine, and pestilence. These children made their first appearance recently and then resurfaced once more extremely recently in the newest X-Men series. They hold a grudge against Apocalypse, who they believe abandoned his family. They blame him for such, and while you might think that Apocalypse is a villain, so who cares, right now he is aligned with the other mutants of Krakoa, and as such is actually considered mostly a good guy? For now anyways. He did do some shady stuff, so not so nice, Apocalypse. Or however we're saying your name now, Krakoan symbols with an A in the middle, however I say that in Krakoan. Number 6. Dark Carnage. Dark Carnage is like Cletus Cassidy but dead, and brought back to life using the Grendel symbiote, and then turned into a towering skeletal monster that is hungry for your spine. Well, maybe not your spine specifically, but if you bonded with a symbiote ever, alive or dead, he's hungry for that spine. It's finger licking good. Delicious spines. Dark Carnage was sort of the final phase of Cletus Cassidy, who sought to awaken Null by gathering all the codices from within all those beings who had ever bonded with a symbiote. Doing so would awaken the Dark God, which was just the kind of chaotic party Cassidy was all about. In attempting to do this, he perished, but was ultimately successful as Null is now awake and headed for Venom and Earth. Cletus may be gone as a result, but the villain has died many times and returned in many different incarnations, such as this new one, Dark Carnage. I'm excited to see if he comes back again, and when he does, just which version of Carnage we'll see next. Maybe some kind of dark immortal Carnage.
Number 5. The Absence. The Absence is one of those villains who just at first glance you might be like, okay, come on, what is this? The Absence first appeared in 2011. She was Una Nemo, one of Bruce Wayne's many girlfriends, and by that I mean just one of the girls that he went out with, but she was really into it and Alfred liked her. Anyway, she got shot through the head but magically survived, despite there being a giant hole where her brain brain should be. She then became a supervillain, murdering Bruce Wayne's exes. So why is she called the Absence? Well, not only because of the giant hole in her head, but also because she is showing Bruce what he is missing. Yeah, the Absence appeared 7 times. Number 4, Mr. Bloom. Mr. Bloom got quite the write-up when he first appeared in 2015. The design helped, it was a pretty cool look. He had a bit of a Slender Man thing going on, but with a giant flower on his face that also looked like it was gonna eat you. It made him quite visually unique. So Mr. Bloom stole some high-tech seeds in order to experiment upon himself. He then decided, after experimentation was complete, that it was his job to prune Gotham, as he felt that the city had lost its way. I mean, he's not wrong, but that's also not the way to do it. Again, super cool look, but he didn't prove to have that much staying power. Number 3, Mr. Bygone. Now, he appeared in 2014 in Batman Eternal, and was meant to be a physical manifestation of the insanity inside of Arkham Asylum. He seemingly was one of the early patients at the hospital who witnessed its decline. He was meant to be mysterious, and he was so mysterious that he essentially vanished after this arc. The Batman Eternal storyline is a bit of a mixed bag for many readers. Number 2, the Victim Syndicate. Here's a depressing concept coming at us from 2016. Here we have what started off kind of like a support group for people who have been affected by Batman and his rogues. Those poor people who live in Gotham who are perpetually caught in the crossfire. Well, they don't want to take it anymore. And they want to rid the city of Batman a bit more than the rogues, subscribing to the mentality that they exist because of him. They eventually took up criminal aliases to accomplish all of this. See? Just depressing. Depressing stuff. Their leader was called the First Victim. And in at number 1, some of you probably guessed it, the Batman Who Laughs. The Dark Knight's Metal event gave the world many evil alternate Batman and women, but the one who stood out the most and earned himself a place inside DC Comics history, it's gotta be the Batman Who Laughs. It's gotten to the point where some would even say he could potentially be being overused. The Batman Who Laughs was a fusion in a way of Batman and the Joker. After Batman killed the Joker and inhaled a Joker toxin emitted from his corpse, he slowly began to transform into the Joker. And by midway through this transformation, he had completely embraced it. He was cool with it, killed his whole family, killed Superman. It was quite an event. This character proved so popular that he would transition into the main verse and stay there for a bit, and actually be involved in some of the current at the time of this recording arcs that were just finishing off. He's fighting Apex Lex. So it's safe to say that this might not be the last time we see the Batman Who Laughs anytime soon. Staying power. Some of them have it.
Number 10, Mr. Negative. Starting off strong, we have a supervillain who was introduced in 2007, and yet despite being newer to the Spider-Man supervillain roster, has quickly risen in terms of his evil acclaim. Mr. Negative's true identity still remains somewhat of a mystery to us. He was originally a member of a gang in China known for human trafficking. Looking to escape the criminal life, he stole the identity of one of the human cargo who had perished on the journey to the States, Martin Lee, who was setting out to America to join his wife. Martin Lee, and now that's what we think when we think Mr. Negative. He ended up kidnapped by Simon Marshall, who was developing a drug called D-Light, the experimentation of which often led to the death of those who tested it. He forcefully tested it on fake Martin Lee, aka Mr. Negative, and 2 other hostages of his who somehow survived the process. The 3 escaped, and as a result of the experimental drug, developed superpowers attached to the Dark Force and Light Force. Martin Lee would become Mr. Negative, and the other 2 prisoners, Tyrone Johnson and Tandy Bowen, would become Cloak and Dagger. The effects also caused a split within Mr. Negative's personality, dividing the evil criminal persona of Mr. Negative from the kind and sweet persona of Martin Lee. Mr. Negative has the power to corrupt a person, bringing out the dark side of them with just a touch. He can also imbue weapons with the Dark Force, making them stronger, or increasing their strength, you know, whatever. Anyways, that's it. That's all you gotta know about Mr. Negative apparently. I told you enough, I told you his origins. Number 9, Hippo. I felt we had to include Hippo because a lot of these villains have just a lot of intense and serious elements to them, and they're all terrifying in their own way, but Hippo does a good job of providing some of the lightness to the new Spider-Man villain scene. After all, Spider-Man comics are often known for having some of the most, ridiculous villains? Comical villains? How can we put that? I don't want to insult them. Not to say that hippos aren't terrifying, by the way, because they are. You don't want to mess with a hippo. I know that. I certainly would not mess with a hippo. Still, Mrs. Fluffy Lumpkins, as Hippo was once known when he was a zoo animal, has a pretty comical backstory, being transformed randomly by the High Evolutionary and then setting out to rob banks because he knows no one would hire a semi-human hippo. The life of a supervillain. It's tough when you're part hippo, part human. Number 8, Massacre. Massacre is a pretty meaningful villain when it comes to those of them that reflect the issues of the times as well, though he is a little on the nose when it comes to this. He was caught up in an attack on Wall Street, and while his wife died during the attack, he survived, though shrapnel became lodged in his brain, and this shrapnel affected his feelings, causing him to basically become detached from his own emotions and his own humanity, enabling him to become a sociopathic villain. He set up shooting people at random, but was apprehended and spared by Spider-Man. He then did some time in Ravencroft, basically the Arkham Asylum of Marvel. After getting out of Ravencroft though, he went right back going on a shooting spree. But this time he was able to leverage millions of dollars out of the mass shooting. During this attack though, he was confronted by Superior Spider-Man, aka Otto Octavius, who was in Spider-Man's body. Otto shot him, and this allowed Massacre to feel fear again for the first time, which he reveled in before he basically died. But he might not be dead, so it's fine. Number 7. The Inheritors. Not everyone is a huge fan of these energy vampires, but they play an integral role in the Spider-Verse story arc. In both of the Spider-Verse story arcs, to be honest, Spider-Verse and Spider-Geddon. The family of vampires who feed off of spider totems and any other animal-based totems were an extension of the original villain, Morlun. Morlun first appeared in the Spider-Man comics in 2001, and it wasn't until 2014 that we would meet the rest of his family, the Inheritors. These energy vampires threaten the existence of the entire Spider-Verse on more than one occasion. The Card himself, who was part of the Inheritor family, would end up defecting, becoming the Master Weaver. In the end, when the Inheritors ended up cloned and returned due to the error of Superior Spider-Man, the head of the family, Solus, and the rest of the Inheritors ended up defeated at the hands of an Enigma Force-powered Miles Morales armed with the Sword Vigor. And it was discovered that Solus was actually behind all the endless hunger that all of his family felt. Because of this, the Spider Army decided to bring back the Inheritors once more, with each of their consciousness transferred into a baby clone of each of them. Free from the hunger that made them evil, they were then all adopted by Spider-Man. Ah, cutest little baby villains ever. We'll see if they grow up to be evil, but I doubt it. They're pretty cute. Number 6. Regent. Regent was also known as Augustus Roman. What a name, by the way, Augustus Roman. He was the man behind a prison known as the Cellar on Rikers Island, which housed some of the most dangerous criminals. Rikers Island itself is known for prisons of this sort. The difference with this one was that Roman was actually using the prison as a means of creating his own superpowered suit to go after the Avengers with. He was mistreating the prisoners, using them for their powers, which he was then able to utilize within his own suit. Roman was obsessed with controlling and containing the superpowered abilities of all superhumans, which he also aimed to do with the Avengers. This had a lot to do with his own backstory. He's got some feelings about superhumans, let me just say. During his fight with the team, we got to see him take on not just Spider-Man, but we also saw MJ join the fight as well, donning the Iron Spider suit. I love when writers let MJ get involved in some of the action. Regent proved to be a challenging foe for the Avenger team, and for Spider-Man, and for MJ, for everyone that was involved. Number 5. Punchline. So Punchline has to be one of my favorite of the newest villains we've seen. I didn't want to like her when she was announced, especially as I thought she was going to be like some new younger version of Harley Quinn, which I didn't really think that we needed. But then I met Punchline, and I gotta say, I like Alexis. She's okay by me. Punchline's real name is Alexis K, and we learned her backstory in the Joker 80th anniversary special. She sought out the Joker believing that his ideology matched or at least suited her own. She has displayed some pretty sweet chemistry and toxicology skills, making Batman his own special version of the Joker venom. How nice. Which tormented him through most of the Joker War story, and has proven how deadly she can be with her stilettos when she managed to land a life-threatening hit on Harley Quinn. I really hope we get more Punchline in the near future. I was pleasantly surprised by how different and interesting she is in comparison to Harley Quinn, and I also just love her character design. Punchline first appeared in Batman Volume 3 in issue 89.
Number 4. Eradicator 2. With that name alone, oh boy, you already know what's coming. The Eradicator 2 was created, of course, after DC's rebirth with the absence of the original Eradicator. Another big bad version was bound to show up. I mean, we expected it. So of course, this is the newer version of Eradicator from the 80s comics. But the best part is that he still has the 80s look. He's got the retro, badass glasses, which are such a nice touch, by the way. Just by looking at this guy, you can tell he's the coolest. Created by General Zod, this AI ended up taking on the physicalities of Superman, hence the everything about him. So when this badass AI is close to a yellow sun, he gets powered up real good. I'm talking the usual super strength, stamina, flight, speed, and he's basically invincible. A cool but scary power that he also obtains is that of energy manipulation, because he's made of course, pure energy. Eradicator wasn't used too much, but I feel like Eradicator 2, since his first new appearance in Superman Volume 4 Issue 2, at the very end we see his rebirth, and it's beautiful. Once the Kryptonian gene is detected back on the Fortress of Solitude, energy forms all around the room. There's an ID badge, some glasses, and then bam, all this mixed into one. You get this bright pop, and his opening line being, "We are here, we will save you too, Kal-El." And it's sick. He's like basically Terminator with the cape. He's got the look, there's this energy coming from him. I would love to see this guy go head to head with Henry Cavill. I mean, maybe we'll get more of a dark alternate version with the Snyder cut of the Justice League, but fine, that'll have to do in the meantime. For now.
Number 3, Clown Hunter. Clown Hunter is just a kid who stepped up to the plate when it came to taking back Gotham during the Joker War. Seeing his neighborhood being ravaged and attacked by the Joker gang and having lost his parents to the Joker, he was inspired to start cracking skulls, which is exactly what he did, defending the innocent with a baseball bat with a batarang attached to it to kill any clowns that crossed his path. His true name is Bao Pham, and at the end of the event, he was confronted by Batman himself, who suggested that he seek help and speak to a therapist. He also offered to mentor Clown Hunter, but warned him that he would not tolerate the teenage Bao killing anyone else, no matter their crime. Clown Hunter seemed interested in getting help, but only after his work was done. Clown Hunter first appeared in issue 96 of 2016's Batman.
Number 2, the Batman who laughs. Bruce Wayne, but from Earth 22, is a touch different than the one that we know best. The Dark Universe is a very special and very vast place filled with alternate versions of characters, but one of the most notable has to be the Batman who laughs. Making his first appearance in Dark Days, the casting, this Bruce Wayne has, well, of course, similar origins that we're familiar with. Parents were murdered, became a crime-fighting bat, protects Gotham, all the good stuff. But this Joker changed his path up. Joker began murdering everybody in Gotham. He bombed a hospital and then shot the parents of the kids. Like, he's twisted, and he's also dying at the same time. He's dying from the chemicals that made him become the Joker in the first place. So of course he wanted to take everybody out with him. So when Batman stepped in and killed him by breaking his neck, the toxins from the Joker were inhaled by poor Batsy, causing this to happen. So a day later, he's joined by Batgirl, Nightwing, Red Hood, Red Robin, who were training in the Batcave, and then Batman then shot all of them. And then this is just the beginning. This insane clown Batsy is terrifying and entertaining in all of the right ways.
Number 1, Ghostmaker. We don't know a lot about Ghostmaker yet. He first appeared in volume 3 of Batman, the current run, in issue 100 as a mysterious figure. And so far, he stayed that way. We'll likely see more of him in issue 103, but so far we know he's not as new as he might appear. In fact, in Batman issue 102, Batman seems to recognize him, leading many to speculate as to which old rival Ghostmaker's true identity could actually be. We do know that he's here to challenge Batman for Gotham and to provide the people with an alternate option when it comes to choosing their hero for their city. He also comes with a ton of tech, and at this point is probably going to quickly end up being better equipped than Batman himself when it comes to gadgets, as Bruce just lost all of his fortune to Lucius Fox. Well, he gave it away, that is. And Lucius is out of the Batman game. Bruce is on his own this time around when it comes to equipping himself, and he only has his own ingenuity and the help of the Bat fam to back him up. Number 10, Oblivion. Oblivion first made his appearance in Green Lantern New Guardians annual issue number 2. He was created after Kyle Rayner edited The Source. Oblivion embodies all of the darker emotions of Kyle Rayner, and he kind of has like a Venom vibe going on, which I dig. He ended up teleporting himself and Carol Ferris to Arizona, where he then created illusions of Rayner's friends and superhero colleagues. Rayner arrived and confronted Oblivion, urging him to fix the town in Arizona that he'd altered with illusions, but Oblivion of course refused. In the end, Kyle realized he had to merge with Oblivion in order to defeat him. However, his attempt to do so resulted in both Oblivion and himself becoming lost within the vastness of the Source. That's why you don't mess with the Source. Number 9, Red Tool. Red Tool made the cut because, while not a serious threat as a supervillain, he is just super entertaining. He's basically DC's ripoff of Marvel's Deadpool, who of course himself is a ripoff of DC's Deathstroke. Red Tool is a mercenary who fights solely with hardware tools and equipment. He was introduced in Harley Quinn's series and seems full-on obsessed with her there. He tattooed his phone number on her butt during their first meeting, wherein he also kidnapped her. Despite his obsession, however, and the two getting off on somewhat of the wrong foot, or maybe the odd foot really, the two eventually became good friends, with Red Tool's Wayne Wilkins even becoming a potential love interest for Harley. I also just love that all of his speech bubbles tend to be tools. It's cute. Bonus points for art. Number 8. The Inheritors. So I know not everyone loves the Inheritors as much as I do, but my love of Victorian style and vampires as well as alternate versions of Spidey meant that these villains, well, they were basically destined for me to love them. These energy vampires have plagued many different versions of spider people as they feed off of the energy of spider totems. The other awesome thing about them is they help to bring us Spider-Verse and Spider-Geddon, which ultimately led to the development of the film version Into the Spider-Verse. And without them, we also wouldn't have the Web Warriors or any of the Spider Army. So yeah, you might not agree that they are terrifying and awesome, but either way, you have to agree that they are kind of important in developing the Spider-Verse itself. So respect. There's gonna be so many people being like, Amanda just loves Twilight vampires or something in the comments. I don't. Just FYI, in case you're wondering. Number 7. Kindred. Kindred was a new Spider-Man villain who first fully appeared in Amazing Spider-Man Volume 5, Issue 5, after being mentioned many years ago in Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man Issue 12. Not much has been revealed about the villain, which automatically makes them super intriguing to me. At first, it almost seemed like they could be an ally to Peter. Kindred was a human in life who was sent to hell and death and became a demon. They seem to have known Peter in life and affectionately referred to him as Pete. Kindred even kept an eye on MJ for Peter, but Peter had also had a vision of them harming her. Kindred later revealed that they had returned to get revenge on both Norman Osborn and Peter for causing pain to them in their life, but especially Norman. I mean, obviously caused more pain. However, when they came upon Norman, he was not himself, he was stuck in his Cletus Cassidy persona, so Kindred spared him and simply inserted one of their centipedes into his brain through his ear to keep Osborn/Cletus from killing Spider-Man. Kindred's buying his time, waiting until, Norman Osborn is Norman Osborn again, which is fair, because he wants that revenge to be just on Norman Osborn, not this Cletus persona. Confusing. So all we know is that Kindred is vengeful and seems to have apparently mind-influencing centipedes. Number 6. Red Onslaught. Red Onslaught is a clone of the original Red Skull, Johannes Schmidt. This one managed to take things to a level of ridiculousness that even surprised me. We are talking soap opera levels here, people. Okay, here we go. After Professor X died, this Red Skull clone worked hard to get his hands on the dead telepath's brain. He gave himself a brain transplant, or at least a partial one, in order to harness Charles's old powers, because apparently that's how that works. This made Red Skull pretty powerful. He ended up using this power to turn Genosha into a concentration camp for mutants and Inhumans alike, which obviously royally pissed off Magneto. Magneto, furious, attacked Red Skull, but decided not to use his powers and give him a cleaner death by killing him naturally, by smashing his skull with bricks, which, if we're talking about cleaning up after as in a cleaner death, that doesn't really sound that clean. This was overall a bad move as well, as it only unlocked a more powerful persona within Red Skull, known as Red Onslaught. The terror and hate that Red Onslaught unleashed set us up for the Axis event, as the only way to stop Red Onslaught was by Scarlet Witch flipping his psyche to give the small consciousness of Xavier that was still left in that brain more control. Number 5. Black Winter. Black Winter was actually an old villain sort of made new and shiny again. Originally we came to know this cosmic evil constant as the Creeping Plague, although I do like the name Black Winter better than Creeping Plague. It was credited with being the entity responsible for the death of the cosmos prior to its rebirth when Galen was first transformed into the being known as Galactus. The Black Winter was meant to be this massive, unstoppable eldritch villain, though shortly after its full appearance in Thor issue number 4 from 2020, it was swiftly defeated 2 issues later. It's not so unstoppable. Though it did require the power of Galactus, which Thor wielded in order to destroy the Black Winter, getting a brief glimpse of his possibly perilous future in its last falling snowflake. So yeah, it did require a lot of power, I guess, to take it out, but still, it was only 2 issues. They were like, this thing, it's massive, and defeated, no props. Oh yeah, the Black Winter is also kind of like an eldritch storm that basically erases the existence of all it comes into contact with, and it comes with bonus visions of your own destruction. Number 4. Xeno. Xeno is a mutant terrorist group who is composed of others from previous mutant hate groups. The idea is all those mutant hate groups have now unified like the mutants themselves, becoming this new group known as Xeno, which was written to be a play on the word xenophobia. Xeno managed to capture mutant Domino and use her skin to mask their own soldiers as mutants so that they could infiltrate Krakoa and massacre as many mutants as possible before the alarm sounded in the mutant nation. During their first appearance, they managed to assassinate mutant leader Charles Xavier. Though fortunately Charles was able to be resurrected following this instance, and Krakoa covered up the successful assassination to make it seem as though he was never killed in the first place. Because you can't let other world leaders know that your world leader was assassinated. That's it's not so good. Number 3, Mutant Trauma Support Group. The Mutant Trauma Support Group is a new group with an age-old message to deliver to all humans who hate mutants. You are not alone. The group offers support without judgment to those who have been wronged or felt like they have been wronged by mutants. They offer no judgment, only support. No hate speech or degrading comments are allowed in the community unless directed towards mutants. The group appears to have all their revenge missions and anti-mutant gatherings organized via an online community, possibly via a social media channel or some kind of exclusive forum. They first appeared in 2020's Wolverine in issue number 4, where they targeted, you guessed it, Wolverine. Although they had their plans of vengeance cut short by an unexpected guest, it's likely that there are many more members of the group that we could run into in the future. Number 2, Annihilation. Annihilation is a dark god who possesses those who wear their golden mask. Whoever so possesses their mask is overtaken by the dark entity within it, and depending on their own strength is often destroyed by the sheer power of the god and mask itself. It is believed to be the spirit of Amenth manifested, and is also linked to the control and rule over the Amenthi demons. Without anyone wearing the mask to rule them, the Amenthi demons are revealed to be destructive and reckless, destroying anything and everything they can get their hands on without any need for a reason. The shocking revelation of Annihilation's current true identity was recently revealed in the current X-Men run in issue 14. No spoilers for anyone who isn't caught up. Number 1, Kang. Kang the Conqueror is believed to be coming to the MCU in this next cinematic phase. So while he might not be a new villain in terms of the comics, in terms of the MCU he's going to be one of the freshest we've seen. Once he shows up, that is, in Ant-Man 3, which is expected to release in 2022. Woo! 2022, that's a long way away. It is believed that the brilliant Jonathan Majors will be playing Kang, or at least one form of him, and that he'll be showing up in Ant-Man 3. And that's according to the Ant-Man 3 IMDb page. It's right on there if you look at it. The cool thing with Kang, however, is that he's a time-traveling villain who as a result has been known by many different identities and aliases throughout his history. So while Jonathan Majors may be playing one version of him, there might be other actors also playing Kang. The weird thing though with Kang is that he's a time-traveling villain who as a result has been known by many different identities and aliases. So yeah, it could be great or it could be really confusing. We've known him as Immortus, Ramatut, and even at one point as Iron Lad. It'll be interesting to see how Marvel and Disney aim to integrate Kang and what this means for not just the main continuity but the potential multiverse within the MCU.
Number 10, King Tut. Now you may be saying, hold on, King Tut has been around since the 60s, enjoying hijinks with Adam West and Burt Ward, a professor who gets a head injury that makes him think that he is King Tut, but also makes him a supervillain and commit crimes for reasons. Then if he gets hit again, he's back to normal. Despite being described as the only successful character created for the TV show by Adam West, the character didn't make his comic debut until 2009 in Batman Confidential number 26. Here he has a bit of a different backstory. He is a criminal Egyptologist who robs the wealthy and leaves riddles, so he's kind of veering into the Riddler's wheelhouse, his territory. This did lead to a cute other appearance where they were kind of friends. He really isn't too used and has never regained the lovability he had in the 60s. Number 9, the Heretic. The Heretic appeared during the Grant Morrison era in 2010 and was plaguing Batman, but in particular Damian Wayne, Robin. The Heretic would actually kill Damian in one of the more controversial moments of the early 2010s pre-New 52. He would be skewered like a kebab. The Heretic would turn out to be a clone of Damian Wayne, one who had been hyper-aged and was also bitter and jealous over the fact that their mother, Talia al Ghul, clearly cared more about the real Damian. This all would push Batman briefly over the edge and he'd end up taking some Man-Bat serum. The Heretic would die, but like so many people he would get better, but transition into being mostly a foe for Damian. Number 8, the Dollmaker. The Dollmaker is the leader of the Dollmaker family being in quotation marks. He debuted in 2011 in Detective Comics. He is Barton Mathis, a mad doctor rather than a scientist, who as one can imagine has a penchant for turning people into dolls. If this sounds very familiar, it's because characters like this have appeared frequently in media. The Dollmaker is also famous for being the person who cut off the Joker's face after he asked him to, because that was an arc, the Joker walking around with his own face, Harley putting that face on Deadshot's face. The Dollmaker runs an organ trade business, but considers the Toyman a father figure, which is kind of confusing because he's not the Toyman's biological son. That instead is Anton Schott, who also went by the name the Dollmaker, because why not? Make things as confusing as possible. Number 7, Talon. With this number we can also include the Court of Owls, which has gone down as one of the most memorable storylines, and the Talons have stuck around and made a lasting impression. The Court of Owls is a secret society made up of Gotham's elite that has operated in the shadows and has its own League of Assassins known as Talons. They're almost in the realm of myth. These agents have set their sights not only on Batman, but also Dick Grayson, who is supposed to be a Talon before his life was derailed by the mob. I mean, you can predict a lot of things, but it's really hard to predict that the 2 rich parents you have killed will die in front of their son, causing him to become a vigilante. The Talons in general also have a very cool look, very evil Owlman. Number 6, the Son of Pig. Professor Pig is arguably one of Gotham's grossest villains. He is a scientist who suffered a nervous breakdown and became a supervillain wearing a pig mask. He would kidnap people and perform surgery on them, which would somehow result in them becoming mind controlled. They would then become puppets called Dollatrons. He's actually got some interesting ties to literature with Pygmalion and the like. It works. His son also adopts a pig mask and kidnaps victims, but he is a masochist who tells them that he will teach them to not feel any more pain, like him. The Son of Pig appeared in 2011 while his father appeared in 2007. His father has been much better remembered. The Arkham games helped with that.
Number 5, Xeno. Although the creation and unity we have seen from the mutants in the Dawn of X relaunch has allowed them to shut down those programs who would use mutants as test subjects and as a means to advance human evolution, that doesn't mean that the people behind those organizations just disappeared. In fact, it seems that instead the few people left who still believe in them have found one another and created a more secretive organization in the shadows known as Xeno. Xeno was the group behind the assassination of Charles Xavier in the X-Force series, and while X was successfully resurrected, Xeno still created quite a shiver of panic among the mutants of Krakoa. This organization will likely continue to pop up as an enemy to mutants and the X-Men throughout the relaunch, and they are ruthless, resourceful, and terrifying in their methods, successfully using the captured Domino's skin to ensure their assassinations team success. Ick. Graphic. Get it? Because they graft her skin? Ew. Gotta get that luck though, gotta just slap that luck skin onto ya. Number 4, Apoth. Apoth is the main antagonist of the new Fallen Angel series. While Apoth doesn't directly threaten all of mutant kind or all of X-Men, although at the end they kind of mentioned it like they would be threatening that, they definitely found a strong enemy with one member of the X-Men, Psylocke. Or well, a version of Psylocke anyways. With Braddock and Quanon both being discarded as names for her, Psylocke sets out to seek out her daughter, who had been taken from her years ago when she worked for the Hand. Yeah, apparently she has a secret daughter, that's a thing. And to find a villain called Apoth. Also, I think we can assume because of the whole Hand thing that this Psylocke is Quanon, but she doesn't want us to call her Quanon, so we won't do that. It turns out that Apoth is a god who also kind of has an army of children at their disposal, and that they inhabit 2 sides of themselves, one light, one dark. Psylocke creates a team and works with Sinister to find and defeat Apoth for her own reasons, not knowing that in fact strings have also kind of been pulled in regards to this upcoming battle and why she's going to do it. Apoth is a powerful and psychic, telepathic villain, but still proves to be no match for Psylocke. Number 3, Horticulture. I love these ladies so much. They are basically a villainous eco-terrorist version of the Golden Girls group. They are sassy, elderly women who used to work for corrupt and greedy biotech companies who did not care about the effects of their work in regards to the planet's well-being. As such, these women decided to fight back. They planted their own seeds within the companies, hoping to infiltrate them over time so that they could then have control of all plant life on Earth, deciding what grows and what doesn't. However, with Krakoa's miracle plants and resulting pharma drugs hitting the market as a result of the mutant nation being recognized globally, their plans were kinda threatened. Horticulture formed, and these 4 women, Opal, Lily, Augusta, and Edith, threatened the mutants and Krakoa. They attacked with a green sticky substance that appears to neutralize mutant powers, and vowed to either cause Krakoa to join them or they would cut them down like the weed they are. I sincerely hope we get to see a lot more of them, or that the mutants decide to team up with them because they're just hilarious and amazing. Number 2, Merc. Merc is a team and organization that was built out of the demilitarization that seems to have happened globally as a result of Krakoa being recognized as a nation. Call it a time of peace or call it an anxious time of reserved resources in preparation for the war to come, but regardless of the cause, Merc is comprised of former top paramilitary soldiers who seek out battle because, you know, they were kinda laid off, and as such have become guns for hire. They are loyal to no nation. They were originally employed by Xeno to fight against the X-Force and X-Men, but may have also more recently been approached by the mutants themselves in regards to their services. so we'll have to wait and see. They were fighting against them, but maybe they can be used. Number 1. Hominis Verendi. While the Marauders might operate separately from the X-Men, they are still comprised of a lot of former and current X-Men members, including one of the original team members, Bobby Drake. And it also includes Storm! Yay! This team is led by Captain Kate and ends up going up against the anti-mutant organization Hominis Verendi, which is comprised of former Inner Circle members of the Hellfire Club. Sort of. Also, can we just acknowledge how great the Hellfire Trading Company is though? Separate of course from Hominis Verendi, but still, they're really cool and I just had to shout them out because yeah, they're really fun. Hominis Verendi were previously known as the unofficial Hellfire Brats and were originally part of the Hellfire Academy. The team also has their own White Queen, Black King, and the like, similar to Krakoa's Quiet Council and the former Hellfire Club. But of course, they're all kids, they're all little, non-mutant kids who just want to hate on mutants. Evil children, evil children.
Kicking off the list at number 10. Harley Sinn. Constance Brand, aka Harley Sinn, is the daughter of a billionaire, so you already know she's going to be trouble. Harley Sinn first came around in 2016, making her first appearance back in Gang of Harleys issue 1. First of all, the look of Harley Sinn, I'm here for it. She's got that Rocky Horror Picture Show vibe, she's a badass. The second issue, titled Hit 'em Where It Hurts, we see the tattooed badass punk put in some work. She meets Harley Quinn and during a fun little introduction panel, we see Sinn say the words, "I'm the person that's going to be killing each and every one of your useless gang." So right off the hop, she's kind of a big deal. I don't know, she's in a bad mood. So this rich billionaire father I mentioned earlier, yeah, Harley Sinn's father in fact is believed to be Donald Trump, or at least he was drawn and characterized to resemble him. That plus the tattoos, drug addictions, and lust for violence, you got yourselves quite the villain. And before we move on to number 9, make sure if you guys haven't done so already to go ahead and click that like button. It helps us out a bunch here at the studio, and it's this one, not this one. Unless you're a Spider-Man, then maybe it's that one. Go ahead and click that one.
Number 9. Grail. Grail is the villainous daughter of Darkseid and basically acts as an opposing force to Wonder Woman. The two women were born at exactly the same time, and it was prophesied that Grail, the daughter of Darkseid, and Myrna would bring about much destruction. As such, she was almost killed as soon as she was born, but her mother protected her. She proved almost right away in the comics that she was a new villain worthy of our time when she made easy work of the Justice League. She and Diana ended up facing off shortly thereafter, but their fight was interrupted. However, they would continue to clash during the Darkseid War and likely will keep doing so, as Grail was basically designed to be the perfect foil for Wonder Woman. Grail was first introduced in Justice League Volume 2, Issue 40.
And number 8. Godspeed. August Hart, aka Godspeed, made his first debut not too long ago in The Flash Rebirth Volume 2, Issue 1. With a name like Godspeed, one can only assume the powers in which they'll contain. Super speed, which is also my favorite superpower on the low. Created by Joshua Williamson and Carmine Di Giandomenico, sorry if I butchered that name, I tried 7 times. Godspeed stands out from the rest of the speedsters because of one badass reason. He can separate speedsters from the Speed Force. Now if you watch the CW's Arrowverse, you know what I'm talking about already. August Hart was also a detective, a former partner of Barry Allen, to be frank. And then along comes a force storm in Central City and all of a sudden you have these godlike powers. Pretty ideal powers for a hero and also a villain. That's right, as you would have guessed by clicking this video, he doubles as a villain on the low. So he became the Flash's partner while secretly becoming Godspeed the villain. Not cool, dude. Why'd the villain move though? Well, when August's brother was murdered by a criminal, he was released due to insubstantial evidence. So August decides to confront the Black Hole organization after they had stolen property from Star Labs. He sees their symbol that resembles one at his brother's crime scene. Interesting. So while confronting him, that's when the Speed Force lightning strikes. I feel like if I was a speedster, I would just be like Quicksilver, right? Hang out in the basement, play some stolen video games. Is it really that hard to just chill out? I know you're angry, but like, it's all good. Speed walk it off.
Number 7. Perpetua. Perpetua is an old evil, but one that we didn't know of in the comics until 2018 when she was first introduced in Justice League Volume 4, Issue 8. Perpetua quickly became known as one of the greatest evils the universe, or multiverse really, had ever known. She was the creator basically of all things and the mother to the Anti-Monitor, World Forger, and Over-Monitor. Billions of years ago, she was betrayed by her own children and trapped in the Source Wall along with her devastating and deadly creatures, the Apex Predators, a vicious combination of Martians and humans. Yeah, she really old. Perpetua was the one ultimately responsible for the crisis in the DC universe, as it was her whisperings from within the source wall that brought them about. The energy allowed her prison to weaken, cracking a little more each time there was a crisis, which was how Perpetua planned to escape. She was eventually freed when the source wall broke as a result of Barbatos and the Batman Who Laughs actions, allowing her to once more wreak havoc on the world and earn back her power so she might rebuild the universe again in her own horrifying image.
Number 6. The Kindred. Making its first appearance in the Multiversity Guidebook number 1, the Kindred is this cosmic force that appeared after the Rebirth event. Created by Grant Morrison, the Kindred is a 4-part entity, and they each represent DC lore, so those 4 being the Speed Force, Magic, Cosmic Power, and Emotional Light Spectrum. So they have a handle on pretty much any angle out there. Now, this is a villain list, so this is bad news for us, or rather bad news for pretty much any world. For starters, they take all of the energy from living creatures. That's how they come together. Nice, teamwork. Teamwork makes the dream work. Also tears. So off the bat, these guys are just OP. I love the look of these celestial gods though. They each have like their own color. Even if Brian Hitch wrote them into his run with the Justice League, with destruction being the driving force, this is still kind of a villain that even I'll root for. I said it, sue me, what's up?
Number 5. Red Goblin. During a fight with Spider-Man in The Amazing Spider-Man Volume 1, issue 798, it was revealed that Norman Osborn was bonded with the Carnage symbiote. Dun dun dun. Very scary stuff, guys, very scary stuff here. Spider-Man, of course, had an appropriate response to this news, and I've got a page from that comic in the links below there for you guys. Red Goblin then proceeded to threaten Spider-Man's loved ones, promising he would kill them, not even as Green Goblin would with like a fall, but only as the Red Goblin could, unless Peter Parker gave up being Spider-Man. Also, the Red Goblin killing your family and loved ones is like definitely not a good idea. Terrified Parker agreed to the Red Goblin's terms, but of course he double-crossed him, promising at the end of the comic to fight on, not as Spider-Man, but as Peter Parker. Gasp. Red Goblin would then chase after his own family, his son Harry, his daughter-in-law Liz, and his 2 grandchildren Normie and Stanley. He was accosted during the ongoings of this family affair by Human Torch, Clash, Silk, and Peter Parker, and later Anti-Venom. But due to the combined powers of the Goblin formula and the Carnage symbiote, he was pretty much able to easily defeat those guys, because that's just how terrifying and powerful Red Goblin is. Not to mention, he's also one of the most ruthless and diabolical villains that Parker has pretty much ever come up against. So yeah, don't mess with Red Goblin. He will mess you up. You don't even know. Number 4. Null. Null has been at the center of one of the biggest, most exciting Venom story arcs yet, Donny Cates' Absolute Carnage. This storyline features, in fact, a spectacularly terrifying cast of great big bads, including a resurrected Cletus Cassidy in the Grendel symbiote, evoking an even more psychotic version of the recently deceased Carnage symbiote, Shriek, the Church of the New Darkness, and Doppelganger, an evil version of Spider-Man, basically. Null seeks to gain control over Cletus and be reborn. As such, Dark Carnage, as we now know him, prompted by Null, attempts to reclaim all of the codexes of those who were once bonded with symbiotes. Codexes are basically like a leftover remnant or an imprint of those symbiotes within one's body. Stored within the spine, by the way. Yeah, so you gotta take it out of the spine. Meaning that we see Dark Carnage as well as a whole bunch of other similarly influenced symbiotes go on a rampage, devouring spines of beloved heroes, villains, and characters both alive and dead, left, right, and center, who were once bonded with any symbiote pretty much ever. Yo, if you guys haven't read Absolute Carnage, you need to read at least some of it. Just at least like a tiny bit. Number 3. Kindred. Kindred was hinted at in the comics more than a decade before he made his comic book debut in Amazing Spider-Man Volume 5, Issue 5. He is maybe one of the best villains because he is still so shrouded in mystery. We don't know a lot about him. In fact, I'm not even sure if he is a he. Could end up being a she. We don't really know. This villain can control and create centipedes and is a demon spawn. In life, he was someone who is close to Peter Parker, hence his codename Kindred. Kindred spirit, get it? He affectionately has referred to Peter as Pete. All we know so far is that he's out for blood when it comes to Norman Osborn, and also has a grudge against Pete for some reason as well. He was also powerful and terrifying enough to have had Mysterio pledge loyalty to him. So you know. like kind of a bigger bad than Mysterio. Mysterio's pretty big bad, pretty big. Number 2, Dr. Octopus. Well, Dr. Octopus is one of the oldest and most iconic Spider-Man villains around. I know y'all were about to be like, but wait, Dr. Octopus he came out in issue 3. Though Chameleon actually was first, came out in issue 1, there was an amazing alternate version of him that needs to be acknowledged. In Into the Spider-Verse, we got to meet a female version of Doc Ock known as Olivia Octavius. So why do we love her? Well, because she is terrifying, brilliant, has a great character design, and is voiced by Kathryn Hahn. And because she was also unexpected. When you're making superhero movies or even writing comics today, it's hard to keep things feeling fresh and unpredictable. And this was honestly something I myself was not expecting when I was watching the movie. I also just love that she has kind of like a Tom Baker's Doctor Who vibe going on with her headband and her scarf. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but I just felt like it was cool. Maybe I'm just imagining things because I love Doctor Who too much. You asked for the newest villains and you got it. Cadaverous first appeared in the 2019 Spider-Man series co-written by J.J. Abrams and his son Henry Abrams. It's an experience. Cadaverous is a combination of technology and organic parts, a human face, and almost human mind, albeit one that seems to struggle to speak properly. Takes him forever to get a sentence out. Make up this huge cybernetic monster. In the first issue, we handily see him defeat Peter as Spider-Man and kill MJ, leaving their son Ben to grow up moody and without his mom, and sort of without his dad, who abandoned him. He's got a hook hand, life is hard. It now seems that Cadaverous has a villainous plot, and that young Ben and possibly his absentee hook-handed father Peter will have to work together to unravel and eventually stop said plot. Oh yeah, and he's also got an army of robots. Number 10, Luminous. Luminous was actually a pretty cool new villain who seemed to really only be used for one story arc. She was one of the only cool things really to come out of the realization that Wanda and Pietro Maximoff were not actually Magneto's children as we'd been led to believe for years. In fact, they weren't even mutants. They were the product of the High Evolutionaries' experimentation, which fit more in line with their origins in the MCU, which I guess is why we changed that. No, I'm not mad about it. Not at all. It turns out the High Evolutionary had also used their genetic material to create a sister for them both, known as Luminous. She possessed both the chaos magic, reality warping powers of Scarlet Witch, as well as the super speed of Quicksilver, and was originally ordered by her father, the High Evolutionary, to kill her genetic siblings. She tried real hard. Number 9, Pets of Evil Masters. While the Pets of Evil Masters might not be the most impactful villains around, they are definitely some of the most adorable. These villains obviously seek to thwart the Pet Avengers, the pets of Earth's most mightiest heroes. Like their heroic opponents, the Pets of Evil Masters are exactly what they sound like, the pets of some of the most vile villains in the Marvel Universe. They are led by Doctor Doom's pet Vulture, Vulture Von Doom, and include Thori, Loki's Hellhound, and Bitey McSpidey, who isn't stated to be owned by any specific villain, but is implied to be the spider that was responsible for creating Spider-Man. On Earth 616, that spider may have died, but on Earth 97161, where the Pets of Evil Masters are from, I guess that little spider lives on, seeking to wreak all kinds of havoc. And before we move on to this next part, just a quick thank you to you for sticking around watching this video, and if you haven't already, something that helps us out a ton here at the channel is clicking that like button, so do it. Click the like button, and if you did already, thank you so much for doing so, it really helps us out. Number 8, Null. While Null did first appear as a mysterious being in Thor God of Thunder issue number 6 in 2013, he wouldn't receive a full appearance with more exploration and embellishment in terms of his history until the summer of 2018. Now Null has become such a big figure that he is threatening not just Venom's existence, but the existence of all of Earth's heroes with the King in Black event that is slated to start in December. Null has come a long way since that first mysterious appearance, and it's likely he's going to aim to go even further to guarantee his place in the Marvel history books and lore for years to come. Number 7, Immortal Abomination. Immortal Abomination is the devastating monster that first appeared in Immortal Hulk issue 18. He appears to be genetic material belonging to Emil Blonsky spliced with that of Rick Jones, which gives us a really messed up version of Rick with 2 heads in a monster body. This version of Rick Jones and Abomination is also referred to as Subject B. Eventually he was put down later on in Immortal Hulk, but he is a horrifying, powerful powerful and emotionally painful creature for the Hulk to come up against, especially considering how close he and Rick Jones were. This version of Abomination, it should be noted, is different from the Abomination that we later come to know originally as General Reginald Fortean. The General Fortean version of Abomination first appeared in issue 19 of the Immortal Hulk series. Number 6. Ultimatum. Ultimatum is basically Dark Miles Morales from Earth 616. He grew up as part of the Rigoletto crime family and later in his life ended up serving time in prison in place of his cousin. Although Miles Morales, aka Spider-Man, has basically been moved to the Prime Universe of Earth 616 and made it his new home, following the destruction of his original universe, the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610 and the Incursions, there was another Miles Morales who originally was from the main continuity, from Earth 616. We'll call him 616 Miles Morales, try to make this less confusing for you. That Miles Morales of Earth 616 became a villain, working in league with Kingpin, aka Wilson Fisk. 616 Miles has a scarred face and ends up becoming the villain known as Ultimatum. 616 Miles actually took that villain alias of Ultimatum and was planning on trying to send 1610 Miles, Spider-Man, back to his original universe and take over Brooklyn in the ongoing comic series Miles Morales Spider-Man. He was momentarily stopped, however, by Spider-Man himself and Prowler, who escaped his clutches. Miles versus Miles, who wins? Too many Miles! Just kidding, you can never have too many Miles Morales in my opinion. Number 5. Godspeed. This villain was introduced in Rebirth. August Hart was a witness to the event that gave Barry his speedster powers. He was also Barry's partner on the Force and was granted his own speedster powers as well, using them to get revenge on his brother's killers. When a speedstorm granted multiple civilians speed powers as well, August joined Barry in rounding them up. What Barry didn't know at the time was that August was actually Godspeed, a villain who was tracking down civilians with speed powers and draining them of their speed energy to make himself more powerful, and thereby killing those he siphoned speed from. In fact, it's this power of harnessing other speed energy that made him so dangerous as a villain. Number 4. MODOK. Remember when Donald Trump made his way into the comic book world? He appeared in Spider-Gwen Annual No. 1 in 2016 on Spider-Gwen's home of alternate Earth 65, where he became that Earth's version of terrifying yet hilarious villain, MODOK. Pretty fitting, I think. Not only does MODOK, which stands for Mental Organism Designed as America's King, make the list because of how topical he is, but he also makes our cut because he was one of the last creations revealed by Stan Lee, who thought it was fitting that the villain be defeated by Earth 65 Captain America, aka Samantha Wilson, who is both female and a person of color. Although Lee was not responsible for the villain's creation, he definitely got a kick out of this one. MODOK was created by Jason Latour and Chris Visions. Number 3. Orcus. One of the biggest threats to mutant kind has recently appeared in the comics, although mutant leaders like X almost seem to be becoming somewhat eerily villainous themselves in a way. No side in the House of X series actually seems quite just, which I think is what I like so much about it. It all feels very gray area when it comes to the characters, despite the fact that their views are also very, very extreme. Still, if you are siding with the mutants, then Orcus is the enemy that we are talking about for this list. They are an organization comprised of many different agencies such as SHIELD, Strike, Sword, AIM, Armor, Hammer, Hydra, you know, just all the acronyms there. Oh, and Alpha Flight. Not an acronym, but still important. Their goal is to protect humanity from drastic events that could threaten the human population. One of their projects that we saw in House of X was the Mother Mold, a creation even more dangerous than a Master Mold. The Mother Mold learns and changes the mold of Sentinels it creates over time, learning as it creates and witnesses the outcome of those Sentinels it builds and sends out. While the X-Men defeated the Mother Mold, just the prospect of a team which is smart enough to build such tech is terrifying if you're a mutant. 3 Jokers. While we wait for this one to be released, these 3 mysterious villains gave us Batman fans one of the biggest gasp moments maybe ever. In Justice League issue 42 from 2015, when Batman asked the Mobius chair, which knows all, about the identity of the Joker, it gives him a strange answer, that there are actually 3 Jokers. What? We didn't even find out though what that answer was until 8 months after the question was asked as well. We just got to see Batman be like, what? And then we were left with that cliffhanger piece of information that there were 3 Jokers for like what feels like forever. Jeff Johns and Jason Fabok set out to work on a miniseries from DC's Black Label exploring this mystery titled Batman 3 Jokers. But this series has since had its expected release date pushed back and then back again. And now it's looking like we should probably see this book sometime this year in 2020. Hopefully it's worth the wait, and hopefully Please let it end up being canon. Still, prospects seem good for these three Jokers. I really just want to know who they are. It's very exciting. Number 1. Dark Carnage. Okay, so I know that Cletus has been a villain who has been around since the 1990s, but his latest resurrection and change has taken the supervillain to new heights, breathing new life into him and changing him into something beyond his more well-known alias as Carnage. Following the events of the Poison invasion, Cletus returned to Earth, literally plummeting out of the sky. As the atmosphere threatened to burn him up upon re-entry, the Carnage symbiote re-emerged, attempting to protect its host. However, it failed, and it seemed that Cassidy and Carnage had perished, until a Null-worshipping cult got its hands on his corpse and managed to bond Cletus with the ancient Grendel symbiote, aiming to turn him into a vessel for Null to return in. This set in motion the events of absolute carnage, putting in danger the lives of anyone who had ever bonded to a symbiote, or the corpses of those now deceased who had bonded to a symbiote, as Dark Carnage set out to consume their symbiote codices located in their spinal columns. Number 10. Children of the Vault. The Children of the Vault are their own race who seek to rule the world. They are neither mutants nor humans, though they did evolve from the human race. The children are part of a race that descended from humans, having been technologically evolved over the course of 6,000 years. They believe only one race should rule Earth and plan on becoming said race. One of their members, Seraphina, recently resurfaced in the Dawn of X-Men series, having escaped from Orcus, who had somehow captured her. Before Wolverine could catch her though, she returned to the Vault, where she was also seen rejoining the other children. Number 9. Phalanx. So the Phalanx are kind of complex. If you're familiar with the Phalanx, it's probably because you are familiar with the Annihilation Conquest story arc from 2007 to 2008. The Phalanx work basically to destroy matter and upload it to a hive mind of data using the techno-organic virus, assimilating all organic and inorganic matter that they come across in the universe. So they're basically like the Technarchy, but the Phalanx share a collective mind, where the Technarchy are individuals. Phalanx aim to absorb all matter in the universe and eventually manage to threaten all of Earth and mutant kind respectively. It is only through Moira's regeneration abilities that we know the great risk this hive mind tech race could pose, and has posed to the X-Men and all of life before, in a previous one of Moira's lives. Number 8. The Supremacy. The Supremacy sought to take down and defeat the X-Men in an alternate future. We learned a bit more about them in Powers of X. They were the ones behind Nimrod the Lesser and eventually Nimrod the Greater, and their library of Homo sapiens and mutants alike. After years of breeding mutants in camps to use as their slaves and hounds to fight against their own kind who had revolted, they went a step further, literally dissolving mutants in tanks of femto fluid until they were reduced to nothing but the data that comprised them. Ugh. They would then be stored in a great library where the data that their corpses provided could be used to win the war against mutant kind. Eventually, the war became obsolete, however, making this whole process and the library that stored this data almost eerily useless, which is creepier. Don't put me in femto fluid, please. Number 7. Orcus. Orcus is a combination of a variety of government organizations, some more noble than others. The money and structure behind Orcus has been provided by such iconic organizations as AIM, SHIELD, and Strike primarily, with smaller investments belonging to organizations such as SWORD, Alpha Flight, Hammer, Armor, and even Hydra. The goal of Orcus is to protect humanity from growing global threats, which in this case involve mutants. Their plotting caused Professor X to create a task force to stop the creation of a mother mold, which he and Moira McTaggart believed would be the beginning of the end for mutants in regards to the Nimrod tech that the mother mold would produce. However, we later discovered in the new X-Men series that the work of scientist Alia Gregor, who is affiliated with Orcus, proves that this assumption may have actually been wrong, and that Nimrod tech may continue to be a threat to the X-Men even with the mother mold destroyed. Also, now Alia's got an even bigger hate on for the mutants and the X-Men after the death of her husband, which happened when the mutant team infiltrated the Orcus space station and destroyed the mother mold. Number 6. Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao is a very wealthy politician who was publicly humiliated by Kate Pride. Yeah, she's dropped Kitty and she's just going by Kate Pride now. And Bishop. She was humiliated when she attempted to blame mutants for her missing husband, who turned out had actually just joined a kind of cult of worshipping and celebrating mutants. So that's kind of awkward for her. Frustrated, she decided to make a very generous donation to anti-mutant organizations and aims to continue her own fight in the war against mutants. She donated to one very specific anti-mutant organization actually, which we'll talk about soon. Number 5. Orchis. If you didn't already know me to be a big Marvel X-Men fan, then this list should solidify that as a thing for you. Yes, it is definitely a thing. I love the X-Men. Orchis is the new big bad for mutant kind introduced originally in the House of X series. House of X and Powers of 10 were the series that launched into this new wonderful X-Men line with Jonathan Hickman at the head, Dawn of X. Orchis is designed to be kind of the ultimate mutant enemy. With mutants coming together and putting their differences aside, it also inspired their enemies and even allies in some cases to become wary of them and do pretty much the same. Orchis comprises multiple organizations, each comprising different percentages of the organization, including S.H.I.E.L.D., Sword, Alpha Flight, Hammer, Hydra, AIM, Armor, and Strike. When I did that, I almost lost my ring. Oh my goodness. Orchis' goal is to monitor and prevent the potential extinction of humans on the planet, and they see mutant evolution and advancement as a threat to that goal. Number 4. Horticulture. Horticulture have to be some of my favorite of the newest villains and villain groups to surface. They are a group of elderly women and botanists who are focused on preserving the planet, focusing on returning it to a more pristine state. In other words, they want to make sure people stop messing everything up by taking control of everyone's food source, in essence controlling plant life and crops, in order to decide who gets to live and kinda who gets to die. As of right now, there are 4 women who are part of the group that we know of: Lily, Edith, Opal, and Augusta. They also made a brilliant and hilarious appearance in the limited Empire X-Men series, which by the way, if you haven't read, is pretty hilarious and great, and I do recommend it. You don't really have to read Empire to enjoy it either, you just need to know the general plot of that event to enjoy the story of this 4-issue series featuring my fave new villains, Horticulture. Number 3. White Sword. White Sword was one of the mutants who was part of the original mutant nation of Okara, which Apocalypse and his wife Genesis ruled. He was one of the leaders who was sent along with his army of 100 champions to defeat the Amenthi who attacked. He was believed to have been victorious, but was also lost to his people as a result. A healer capable of resurrection, he would revive his army daily to fight the Amenthi horde the following day. It's said that this drove the White Sword somewhat insane, and when he later ran into his own people such as Genesis, who herself had been sent out with a mutant army under her command, he saw even them as his enemy and he attacked, defeating Genesis. He will be one of the champions to fight on the side of Araco opposing Krakoa in the Ten of Swords tournament. He also happens to look similar to Apocalypse, but with different armor. Maybe you don't see that, but I definitely see that. Number 2. The Viscora. The Viscora are a mysterious alien race that made a brief appearance in Cable Volume 4 Issue 5 as part of the Ten of Swords event. We run into them on the Sword headquarters space station known as Peak 7. It seems the Viscora swiftly invaded Sword's orbital HQ and within 10 minutes had pretty much decimated almost the entire crew. We know this from the log featured in the issue. Those few surviving crew had no other option but to completely shut down the station's power in order to prevent the Viscora from progressing any further with their invasion. To prevent anyone from potentially awakening the station or the Viscora, they didn't send out any SOS calls at the time of powering everything down, and essentially just kind of disappeared. Opal Luna Saturnine was the one who compelled Cable and his parents, Marvel Girl and Cyclops, to awaken the station once more. Though her motives remain unknown, it's speculated that she wanted to harm the family to help prevent Cable and possibly all mutants from being able to enter the Otherworld tournament, although her motives are still very foggy in my opinion. The Viscora seem obsessed with cleansing, dissecting, and learning of any alien life forms. In other words, they pretty much want to kill everyone. Number 1. Donald Blake. Thor issue number 9 of the newest run from 2020 starts off a new story arc titled Prey. At the end of the issue, we see the return of Donald Blake, a former persona of Thor's who basically became his own person but then was trapped in a hell dimension. Driven mad, Dr. Donald Blake has returned, escaped his prison, and seems to be looking for revenge on all of the gods. This is a refreshing and interesting take on an old character, bringing him back as a villain now. It's what I really find intriguing about this new run on Thor, which I thought was maybe going to be trying to take us back to ones with, you know, the title character himself and everything else, and yet we have amazing things like this happening. Donald Blake returning to us not as the same old ally, but as a villain. Shortly after escaping, Dr. Blake is confronted by Loki, so that's the god that he deals with first. Surprisingly, Blake makes quick work of Loki, vowing that he will no longer be a refuge for any god ever again, and they will no longer be able to hide from him. Thor, I think he's coming for you. I think so.